You've seen them, right? These perfect little trees. They look like something straight out of a fairy tale. But what if I told you the most amazing thing about a bonsai has nothing to do with its size? Yeah, let's dig in. Okay, so let's just get the biggest question out of the way first. When you see one of these incredible little trees, are you looking at some kind of, I don't know, a magical species? Was it born to be tiny?
The answer? Nope, not at all. A bonsai is just a normal tree. We're talking maples, pines, ficus, the same kind of trees you'd find in any forest. The real magic isn't in the DNA. It's in the hands of the person caring for it. It's an extraordinary story about time and patience.
And when we say time, how much are we really talking about? Well, get this. The oldest known bonsai is a ficus tree in a museum in Italy, and it's been alive for 1,000 years. That's not just a plant, right? That's a living piece of history. And you know that kind of history? It can come with a pretty serious price tag. Back in 2011, this amazing Japanese white pine, which was around 300 years old, went up for auction. It sold for $1.3 million. Yeah, that's the most expensive one ever sold in public.
Okay, and they're not just valuable, they can also be, well, huge. I know it sounds weird, we all have this image of a tiny tree, but just forget that for a second. The biggest bonsai in the world is a 600-year-old red pine in Japan, and it's a massive 16 feet tall. So right off the bat, bonsai does not always mean small.
All right, so if they're not some special species, then what exactly are they? Let's break down what bonsai is all about. Okay, so here's the deal. Pretty much any tree with a woody stem that grows branches can be turned into a bonsai. It's really an art form, a collaboration between a person and a regular old tree. The goal is to create this vision of nature, just on a smaller scale. And it's the artist, not the tree's DNA, that calls the shots on the final shape. And wow, this art form has a seriously deep history. It actually started in China almost 2,000 years ago, where it was called penjing. Back then, it was about creating whole miniature landscapes in a pot. Then it made its way over to Japan, brought by Zen Buddhist monks. And over time, around the 14th century, the Japanese refined it into what we now call bonsai, which really zeroes in on the beauty of a single tree. And for a long time, it was a bit of a secret. The rest of the world didn't really get a good look until the big world fairs in the late 1800s. So that brings us to the philosophy, the why behind it all. The main goal of bonsai isn't just making a tree small. It's about creating the illusion of a powerful ancient tree that has weathered the storms of time. It's really the art of making something look old and wise. And that idea is at the very core of it. You can see the influence of Zen Buddhism all over bonsai. It's a meditative practice, you know? It's all about finding that balance, that harmony between the artist, the tree itself, and the wider natural world. It is a slow, quiet process that really teaches you a thing or two about patience. So how do they actually pull off that ancient look? Well, artists become students of nature. They go out and study these old, gnarled, weathered trees, and then they try to replicate those features. We're talking about things like a wide, powerful trunk that might even be hollowed out, super rough bark, and a smaller canopy up top. They even have these incredible techniques for creating deadwood, like jin, which are dead branches, and shari, where they strip bark off the trunk to perfectly mimic the beautiful battle scars a tree gets from surviving for hundreds of years. And this vision, this story of age, it's expressed through all these different established styles. Each one tells a unique story. You've got the formal upright, which is like a perfect, proud soldier, straight and tall. Then there's the informal upright with these gentle curves that might suggest it's been reaching for sunlight its whole life. And then there are really dramatic ones like cascade, which looks exactly like a tree desperately clinging to the side of a cliff. But here's the thing. This isn't just about art and vision. To make any of this happen, you need a deep, deep understanding of the science of plants. So let's switch gears a bit and get into the science of how these living sculptures actually get their shape. The number one tool in the toolbox is pruning, and you can think of it in two main ways. First, there's structural pruning. This is like laying the foundation of a house. Big, bold cuts made early on to establish the basic shape. And then you have maintenance pruning. This is more like the decorating, the constant, gentle trimming you do to refine that shape and get that beautiful, dense foliage. Now, to really get why all this cutting and snipping works, we have to talk about this super cool biological idea called apical dominance. It's basically a tree's survival mode. Think about it. In a forest, a tree's main goal is to grow up, up, up as fast as possible to get to the sunlight before other trees do. To do this, the very top tip of the tree produces these hormones called auxins.
And what these hormones do is pretty wild. They basically tell all the lower branches to chill out and not grow so much.
So here's the genius part. That top tip is sending out the don't grow signal. The second a bonsai artist snips off that tip, poof, the signal is gone. And all of a sudden, these little dormant buds on the lower branches that were just hanging out, they get the message that it's their time to shine. They wake up and start growing. That's the secret. The artist isn't just cutting for looks. They're basically hacking the tree's own hormonal system to encourage it to grow outward instead of just upward. That's how you get that full compact shape.
Okay, so shaping is a huge part of it, but it's really just the beginning of the story. I mean, keeping a tree not just alive, but thriving for hundreds of years in a tiny little pot, that takes a lifetime of absolute dedication.
Think about it. A tiny pot doesn't have a lot of soil, which means it doesn't have a lot of food. So fertilizer is absolutely critical. It's like giving the tree a balanced diet. You'll often see it labeled with NPK. The N is nitrogen. That's for lush green leaves and stems. The P is phosphorus, which is all about building strong roots, the foundation. And K is potassium, which is kind of like the tree's multivitamin for overall health and fighting off disease.
And this fertilizer generally comes in two flavors. You've got liquid, which is like an energy shot for the tree. It works fast, but you have to use it more often. Then you have solid fertilizer, like little pellets. That's more of a slow-cooked meal, releasing nutrients gradually every time you water. Which one you use really just depends on the tree and the artist's personal style.
And what about when bugs and pests show up? Because, they will. Well, the approach here is really smart and responsible. It's this whole philosophy called integrated pest management, and it totally fits with the bonsai mindset of working with nature, not fighting it. So step one is never to just grab a spray bottle. First, you try to change the environment. Maybe the tree needs more sun or better air circulation. If that doesn't work, maybe you bring in some good bugs, like ladybugs, to eat the bad bugs. Using chemicals is always the last resort. And even then, it's the mildest stuff you can find.
So when you take all of this, the art, the science, and this incredible lifetime of care, and you put it all together, what you get is something way more than just a tree. You get a living legacy. And there's probably no story that shows this better than the Yamaki pine. This tree is almost 400 years old. It was in a family's garden in Hiroshima back in 1945, and it survived the atomic bomb. Decades later, in 1976, the family that had cared for it for generations gave it as a gift to the United States, and today you can go see it in Washington, D.C. It's just this incredibly powerful living symbol of peace and of pure resilience.
And really, that gets to the most beautiful truth about this art form. Think about it. An artist finishes a painting, they put down the brush, and it's done. A sculpture puts down the chisel, it's finished. But a bonsai is never, ever finished. It is a living, breathing partnership that gets passed down through generations, always growing, always changing.
It really is a true collaboration between human patience and the incredible power of nature. Which kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. If you had centuries, an entire lifetime and then some, to work with a tree, what story would you want to tell together?